Greetings, fellow gardeners and soil stewards. Welcome back to the Humus Heritage, where we dig deep into the wisdom of the earth and uncover the truths that make our gardens thrive. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something extraordinary. Revolutionary pest control methods that have been deliberately kept in the shadows. Forget everything you think you know about pest control. The most effective revolutionary methods aren't found in today's garden centers. They're hidden in ancient wisdom Big Ag hopes you never discover. We're about to expose the powerful natural techniques that guarantee a healthier, more bountiful garden, passed down through generations and proven by centuries of success. There's an invisible threat lurking in our gardens, and it's not the aphids on your roses or the hornworms on your tomatoes. It's the very solutions we've been sold to combat these problems. Even here in 2025, synthetic pesticides continue to contaminate our soil, poison beneficial organisms, and leave residues on the food we feed our families. The chemicals marketed as garden saviors are systematically destroying the intricate web of life that makes healthy gardens possible. But here's what the agricultural giants don't want you to know. The answers to our pest problems have been staring us in the face for thousands of years, refined by countless generations of observant farmers who understood something fundamental that modern agriculture has forgotten. Big Ag has a vested interest in keeping these ancient secrets buried because their entire business model depends on your dependency. When you discover that a handful of common plants' strategic timing and ecological understanding can outperform their expensive chemical cocktails, their profit margins crumble. They've spent billions convincing us that synthetic pesticides are necessary, inevitable, and safe. But the truth is far different. Indigenous farmers and traditional gardeners worldwide have maintained productive gardens for millennia without a single plastic bottle of poison, and their methods are not only safer, but often more effective than anything sitting on store shelves. Indigenous cultures were nature's architects, designing farming systems that worked with ecological principles rather than against them. They understood that plants communicate that certain combinations create invisible shields against pests, and that diversity itself is the ultimate defense. These farmers didn't see pests as enemies to be annihilated but as signals of imbalance that needed correction. When insect pressure increased, they didn't reach for chemicals. They adjusted their planting patterns, introduced complementary species, or modified their timing to avoid peak pest periods entirely. The power of beneficial insects was never lost on ancient cultivators. They recognized that every garden contains both destroyers and protectors, and the wise gardener simply tips the scales in favor of the allies. Indigenous farmers planted specific flowering species around their crops not for aesthetics but as deliberate invitations for predatory insects. They created habitats, small piles of stones, strategic patches of native plants, water features that housed the beetles, wasps, and flies that would patrol their gardens like tiny security forces. This wasn't accidental or superstitious. It was sophisticated biological warfare refined through observation across generations. Perhaps most importantly, traditional farmers understood the profound connection between soil health and pest resistance. They recognized that vigorous, well-nourished plants growing in living soil possess an innate ability to resist pest attacks that weak, chemically dependent plants simply cannot match. Their lost recipes for soil vitality involved fermented plant teas, composted animal manures, green manures plowed under at specific times, and careful attention to the millions of microscopic allies living beneath the surface. They knew that feeding the soil meant the soil would feed the plants, and healthy plants, naturally, defended themselves. The ancient practice of polyculture, growing multiple crop species in the same space, creates confusion and obstacles for pests that thrive in monocultures. When you scatter your tomatoes among basil, marigolds, and nasturtiums rather than planting them in uniform rows, you make it exponentially harder for pests to locate and exploit their preferred hosts. The aromatic compounds released by companion plants mask the chemical signals that pests use for navigation. Cabbage moths struggle to find brassicas when they're surrounded by strongly scented herbs. Aphids lose interest in beans when those beans are interplanted with garlic. This isn't magic. It's applied ecology that any home gardener can implement immediately. Creating your own pest deterrents from kitchen staples and garden materials is remarkably simple and costs pennies compared to commercial products. A basic garlic and chili spray requires nothing more than a handful of garlic cloves, several hot peppers, a quart of water, and, just a few drops of mild soap. Blend the garlic and peppers with water, let it steep overnight, strain. Add the soap to help it stick to leaves, and you have a powerful repellent that works against aphids, beetles, caterpillars, and even larger pests like rabbits. Neem oil, extracted from neem seeds, disrupts the feeding and reproduction of soft-bodied insects without harming beneficial predators. Wood ash, when sprinkled around the base of plants, creates an abrasive barrier that slugs and cutworms simply refuse to cross. Building a garden ecosystem that naturally fends off pests means thinking beyond individual plants to create a complete habitat. Install small water features or bird baths to attract insect-eating birds. Leave areas of your garden slightly wild with native plants that provide year-round habitat for beneficial insects. Resist the urge to remove every dead branch or leaf. These provide overwintering sites for the predators that will protect your spring garden. Plant diverse flowering species that bloom in succession throughout the season, ensuring that ladybugs, lacewings, hoverflies, and parasitic wasps always have the nectar and pollen they need. When you create these conditions, pest control happens automatically because, well, you've assembled an army of allies that work around the clock. The dominance of chemical pesticides has never been about superior effectiveness. It's about profit margins and corporate control. Chemical companies realized decades ago that they could patent synthetic molecules, but not traditional practices or botanical preparations. There's no money in teaching gardeners to make garlic spray or plant marigolds, but there are billions to be made selling proprietary chemicals that must be repurchased every season. The economic drivers are crystal clear: dependency equals profit, and empowered gardeners with self-sufficient skills represent lost revenue. The patent problem extends beyond individual products to the entire structure of agricultural research and education. Universities and research institutions depend heavily on funding from agrochemical corporations, which, naturally skews research priorities toward patentable technologies rather than traditional methods. Studies exploring the efficacy of companion planting or botanical pesticides receive just a fraction of the funding devoted to developing new synthetic compounds. This systematic bias means that agricultural innovation has been channeled almost exclusively toward solutions that benefit corporate interests, rather than exploring and validating the wisdom that, honestly, sustained agriculture for thousands of years. Imagining a future without poison isn't some idealistic fantasy. It's actually a practical necessity. As synthetic pesticides lose effectiveness through resistance, harm critical pollinators, and continue accumulating in our bodies and environment, the agricultural establishment will, at some point, have no choice but to return to ecological principles. The question is whether we'll make this transition thoughtfully by embracing traditional wisdom now, or wait until crisis, really forces our hand. Individual gardeners leading this revolution from the ground up can show that ancient methods aren't just primitive alternatives, but actually sophisticated approaches that modern agriculture desperately needs. Your personal garden revolution, honestly, begins with a single decision to trust observation over advertising and ecology over chemistry. Start by introducing just 2 or 3 companion planting combinations this season. Make 1 batch of homemade pest spray. Plant a small patch of flowers specifically chosen to attract beneficial insects. These small steps will teach you more about pest dynamics than any product label ever could, and you'll see results that convince you to expand these practices throughout your garden. Joining the movement means connecting with the growing community of gardeners who've rediscovered these ancient methods and are sharing their experiences. Seek out local organic gardening groups, explore online forums dedicated to permaculture and traditional agriculture, and share your own observations and results. This collective wisdom grows stronger as more people contribute their experiments and insights. The indigenous knowledge keepers who preserved these techniques through generations would be proud to see them revitalized and adapted by modern gardeners committed to working with nature rather than against it. The ripple effect of individual choices extends far beyond your garden fence. Every time you refuse synthetic pesticides, you protect the pollinators, soil organisms, and beneficial insects in your immediate environment. You reduce chemical runoff into local waterways. You produce food free from pesticide residues for your family. But perhaps most importantly, you demonstrate to neighbors, friends, and family that alternatives exist and work beautifully. One garden at a time, we're building proof that agriculture doesn't require poison, and that the ancient secrets Big Ag tried to bury are the very keys to a sustainable future. If this guide has opened your eyes to the power of traditional pest control methods, hit that subscribe button right now and join the Humus Heritage family. Share this video with every gardener you know who deserves to learn these hidden truths. Together we're cultivating a revolution rooted in ancient wisdom, and your garden is the perfect place to start. Let's grow something amazing.